There's a reason you're still stuck, and it isn't bad luck. It's fear. Quiet, dressed in logic, whispering, "Not yet. Not now. Not you." But what if fear isn't real? What if it's a program installed by people who wanted you small, silent, obedient? This isn't motivation. This is war. We're not here to inspire you. We're here to reprogram you, to strip the hesitation from your bones, to teach your nervous system to stand still in the fire. If you're tired of waiting for courage to arrive, you've found the method that never needed it. Stay, watch, and by the end, you may not feel braver, but you'll never be afraid the same way again. Part 1. The chains we can't see. There's a kind of silence that doesn't soothe. It suffocates. It's the silence that settles around a man when he's paused too long, waiting for something that never arrives. Permission, clarity, courage. Most don't rise in life because they're tied down, not by chains of iron, but by something far colder. Invisible restraints forged from fear. Not the cinematic fear of running from danger, but the soft, familiar kind. Fear of being laughed at. Fear of standing alone. Fear of trying and failing in front of people who never tried at all. They call it anxiety. Self-doubt. I'm just being cautious. But the truth is uglier and more precise. It's obedience. A quiet submission of the mind that started long before you knew how to spell your own name. Someone taught you not to speak too loudly. Someone laughed when you dreamed too big. A failure knocked once, and instead of rebuilding, you built a prison. This isn't who you are. It's who you were trained to be. And just like any training, it can be undone. Part 2. The Man and the Mask of Fear. There's a difference between being afraid and becoming fear. One is a feeling that passes through you. The other becomes a home you start decorating. Most men don't realize they've made fear their roommate. It lives in their words. I'm not ready. I'm scared. This makes me anxious. As if these phrases are small and honest. But they aren't. They're contracts. Signed in silence, renewed every time you whisper them to yourself. But what if fear wasn't truth? What if it was just data? Imagine stepping outside your own body, seeing the nerves, the trembling thoughts, the hesitation, not as who you are, but as a signal, a flash on a dashboard, a surge in your system that says, something here feels unfamiliar. You wouldn't fall apart because your car blinked a warning. You'd investigate. That's what a man must learn to do with fear. Dissect it, observe it, name it without bowing to it. Instead of saying, I'm scared, try, fear is present. Instead of, I can't do this, ask, what story is fear trying to tell me today? Because once fear becomes a story instead of a sentence, it can be rewritten. And if it can be rewritten, it can be ended. Part 3. Rewiring the fear loop. Fear is not a wall. It's a loop, a haunted echo from something you lived through but never understood. It returns not because it's true, but because no one ever taught your nervous system to turn the alarm off. That's the tragedy. Not that you feel fear, but that you've been trained to obey it. Men walk through life thinking they're being strategic, careful, pragmatic. But more often, they're just negotiating with ghosts. They call it timing, realism, wisdom. But really, it's fear, dressed in a suit, speaking calmly, nodding reasonably, but still fear. And fear, if not starved, becomes a king. So you don't hide from it. You don't journal it. You don't wait for the right season of healing. You take it by the throat. Deliberately, daily. You touch fear like it's cold metal in your hand. Not once a month. not just when life demands it. Every single day. You speak the words that tremble in your chest. You publish what might be judged. You walk into rooms you've avoided. You break the rules that were never yours to begin with. But here's the difference. You don't do it for the thrill. You do it for the rewiring. Because your goal isn't to conquer fear with passion. It's to numb your system to its voice, to stop treating fear like fire and start treating it like static. And eventually, it fades. That isn't bravery. That's biology, remade. Part 4. The image that rewrites the fear. Fear speaks in pictures. It doesn't give you facts. It gives you cinema. It shows her walking away when you speak your truth. It shows them laughing when you fail. It shows disaster before you even begin. And if you don't interrupt that reel, your mind will believe its prophecy. But what if you became the director? Every time fear paints a picture, you counter it. Not with fantasy, but with sovereignty. She walks away? Let her. You stand there, calm, untouched. Because eventually, fear can no longer shock you. It becomes a whisper, one you override with a single command. I've seen worse. I've survived deeper. And I'm still here. That isn't hope. That's dominance. Part 5. The philosophy that freezes fear. You can't just erase fear and hope something better fills the void. Nature hates empty space, and the mind even more so. If fear leaves and nothing stands in its place, it returns louder, stronger, dressed in new disguises. That's why you need more than confidence. You need code, a belief system sharper than doubt, colder than anxiety, unforgiving toward hesitation. It sounds like this: pain is proof I'm leaving mediocrity behind. If I lose everything, I become unstoppable. Fear is the last hope of the enemy. The more they test me, the more they fear me. Not mantras, not motivational fluff. These must become your mental defaults, etched so deep that even in chaos, they rise without effort. You don't say them for comfort. You repeat them because repetition carves new instincts. Because when the mind believes something harder than it fears something, the fear dies. Not loudly, not dramatically, but quietly. Like a threat that realizes it no longer has power. This isn't inspiration, it's installation. Part 6. You don't heal, you build. The world romanticizes healing. They tell you to pause, to reflect, to make peace with your pain. And while you're curled in the warmth of self-analysis, fear sharpens its knives. Because healing without action is stillness. And stillness is fear's favorite climate. Most men aren't afraid because they're broken. They're afraid because they're idle. They sit in rooms filled with journals and unsent letters, convincing themselves they need another month, another mentor, another moment. But Machiavelli wouldn't have told you to heal. He would have told you to move, to train, to build, because the man who is too useful to fear becomes too dangerous to stop. You don't fix fear by understanding it. You fix it by drowning it in momentum. When your days are filled with creation, strategy, quiet domination, there is no room left for dread. Fear needs boredom to survive. It grows best in untamed hours, in minds without missions. So kill its habitat. Flood your calendar with purpose. You don't need a breakthrough. You need a war plan. And then, the only thing you'll have time to fear is what happens if you stop. Part 7. The man who has nothing to protect. There comes a moment, quiet, brutal, when a man stares down the worst that could happen and doesn't blink. She leaves. He breathes. He's fired. He rebuilds. They laugh. He sharpens in silence. He fails. He rises, not with noise, but with precision, because the man who accepts the loss before it arrives is the man no one can truly threaten. That's the paradox. Fear dies not when you win, but when you stop needing to. When you whisper, "Even if I lose, I'll survive." Suddenly, the shadows lose their shape. The monsters under the bed become old clothes that no longer fit. You don't fight the worst-case scenario. You shake its hand. You plan for it. You stand inside it with calm eyes. You say, "If this is the cost of becoming unbreakable, I'll pay it twice." And in that moment, fear no longer holds the key, because you've taken the door off its hinges. That isn't recklessness. It's sovereignty. Part 8. Assume permission. There's a question most men never ask aloud, but it whispers through every step they take. Am I allowed? Am I allowed to speak this boldly? To want that deeply? To move without someone's nod of approval? They dress it up in patience. They call it respect. But it's submission, with a softer name. Machiavelli would scoff at the hesitation. He wouldn't wait for green lights. He'd drive through the intersection like it was built for him, because permission isn't given, it's assumed. Unless someone physically stops you, you act, you speak, you move as if the world was waiting for your arrival. And when you do, something shifts, not just in you, but in them. Because most people are secretly watching, hoping someone braver will move first, someone who doesn't flinch, someone who walks into a room and owns it without saying a word. Be that man, even if your hands shake, because courage isn't loud, it's not fearless, it's simply action without asking. Part 9. Pain is the price, not the punishment. Pain arrives like an old creditor, uninvited but inevitable. Most men run. They flinch at the thought of embarrassment, rejection, failure, or discomfort. Not because it will kill them, but because no one ever told them the truth. Pain is not the punishment. Pain is the payment. Every moment you feel your throat tighten before speaking. Every second your palms sweat before acting. That's not suffering. That's tax. And it pays for something far more valuable than comfort. Clarity. Each time you move through pain without retreat, your nervous system gets quieter. Each moment you speak, act, build, even as fear claws at you, you become sharper. The world may ignore you. They may dismiss you. They may laugh. But what they don't realize is this: every rejection is adding weight to your spine. Every bruise is buying resilience. And one day, while they're still avoiding cost, you've already paid in full, because you knew something they didn't. Pain isn't the enemy. It's the currency of evolution. Part 10. Seek rejection to kill its power. Most men live their entire lives tiptoeing around one wound: rejection. They adjust their tone to be liked. They hide their real questions. They walk through rooms like they need permission to breathe. But the Machiavellian man does something radical. He doesn't avoid rejection. He hunts it. Not because he enjoys pain, but because he wants to watch its power evaporate. He walks into rooms where the answer might be no. He asks for what he wants when silence would be safer. He risks the laugh, the eye roll, the dismissal, and something strange happens. After 5 rejections, then 10, then 50, the sting fades. It becomes background noise, like distant traffic, like rain tapping on windows. It doesn't define him anymore. And when rejection loses its meaning, so does the need for approval. Now, he asks freely, moves boldly, commands without fear of outcome. That kind of freedom, it terrifies the world, because a man unshackled from opinions is a man they can't predict, and unpredictability, That's power. Part 11. Repetition rewires the brain. Transformation doesn't happen in a moment. It happens in a streak. A quiet, ruthless streak. Day 1, you say what you were afraid to say. Day 2, you take the action you've postponed for months. Day 3, you sit inside the discomfort. Cold. Still. Day 4, you walk into rejection and don't explain yourself. Day 5, you remain silent while the room panics. And somewhere along that streak, you feel it. Not a rush, not adrenaline, but a shift. You've stopped reacting to fear. You've started conducting your life like a man who chooses the rhythm. Not fear, not doubt. You. And here's the truth no one wants to admit. You don't rewire the mind through motivation. You rewire it through movement, over and over and over. Not spiritual, not sentimental, mechanical. Because the brain doesn't reward good intentions. It obeys whatever you do most often. So make defiance a pattern. Make action your religion. Make courage your routine, not your performance. And soon the mind adapts. It realizes, this man no longer negotiates with fear. He answers only to purpose. Part 12. Build the identity that can't be taken. Most men live on quicksand. They build who they are on being liked, being safe, being accepted, being seen as good. But here's the danger. Anything that can be taken will be. And when life threatens that identity, you panic. Because without their approval, who are you? Machiavelli would call it suicidal architecture. So you rebuild. You anchor your identity not on decoration, but on foundation. I always adapt. I never beg. If it burns, I rebuild. I don't submit to emotion. I respond to mission. Now, when the deal falls apart, when the partner walks, when the reputation crumbles, you remain. That's power. Not the loud kind, the steady kind. Because when nothing outside of you defines you, nothing outside of you can destroy you. And when the world senses that stillness, they call it mystery. But it's not mystery. It's mastery. Part 13. Fear should feel boring. Most men crave the rush of fear, even when they say they hate it. They confuse the tightening in their chest with meaning. They think anxiety means they're alive, that stakes are high, that something important is about to happen. But Machiavelli would tell you, fear isn't a message, it's a malfunction. And the cure isn't courage, it's neutrality. You feel fear? So what? Treat it the same way you pour water into a glass. No drama, no hesitation, no applause. Just action, cold, quiet, unceremonious. Because once fear becomes boring, it loses its story. And when it loses its story, it loses its grip. Now, when others flinch, you move. When they stall, you speak. When they spiral, you act. Not because you feel brave, but because you feel nothing and still move. That's not emotional maturity. That's power in its final form. Unreactive, undeniable, unshaken. Part 14. You were never afraid of the world. It was never the world that frightened you. Not really. It wasn't the strangers, the spotlight, the stakes. It was something far closer, far more dangerous. It was the version of you that didn't ask permission, the one who didn't flinch, the one who moved too quickly, too clearly, for others to feel safe around. That version lives under layers of politeness, of soft answers, of quiet hesitation you've mistaken for wisdom. But that hesitation, it's not humility. It's fear of becoming who you really are. Because you know once he's unleashed, you don't go back. He doesn't beg. He doesn't explain. He doesn't wait for anyone to catch up. He becomes untouchable. And you've been taught your whole life, not to be that man. Not to be too much. But that's where your power lives. In the part of you they tried to tame, in the fire you've been trained to smother, and now you're done smothering it. You're not healing, you're unlocking. Part 15. Stop analyzing. Start attacking. There's a moment when reflection becomes a cage. You sit with your thoughts, turn them over like stones, hoping that if you study them long enough, they'll turn into answers. But they never do. You don't need more clarity. You need more confrontation, because most men aren't working on themselves. They're hiding in their minds, journaling, dissecting, remembering, calling it growth, but really, they're stalling. Machiavelli wouldn't hand you a notebook. He'd hand you a weapon. He'd say, "Don't study your hesitation. Strike it every single time." You don't need more time. You need a record of defiance. Stacked moments when you moved while afraid. When you acted instead of asking. When you stood still in the fire, stone-faced. Confidence isn't a feeling. It's a pattern. Every time you ignore fear, you starve it. Every time you move without its permission, you weaken its hold. Until one day, fear stops recognizing you. It doesn't knock. It doesn't whisper. Because you've become a man with no doors left for fear to enter. Not brave, not invincible, just unavailable. That's the final transformation. Not a roar, but a stare, not a speech, but silence. Not a rise fueled by emotion, but a climb rooted in repetition. And as you reach that summit, you'll realize what fear always wanted to keep hidden from you. You were never weak. You were just waiting to become dangerous. Now you are. And no one, not even fear, knows what to do with you anymore. Closing. You won't leave this video feeling lighter. You'll leave heavier, with the weight of knowing what you must now do. Fear won't vanish, but it will shrink when you stop feeding it. Not through mantras, not through hope, but through movement, deliberate, cold, daily. You don't rise by becoming fearless. You rise by becoming unshakable while still afraid. So go, not to wait, not to wonder, but to build, while the fear still lingers. And when it shows up again, whisper this: "You've already had your chance. I've already walked through your fire, and I didn't burn." Because that silence you feel now, it isn't emptiness. It's power, finally returning to its rightful owner. You.